Hello, good morning. I got something very special to present to you today. This is the finished rig I'll be using to animate this character, Darwin, in my film, Atumo the Grand Execution. I've spent a number of weeks and fucking months designing this character, and he's finally rigged, finally actually animatable. Okay, here we go. So, I'm gonna turn off the controls and show you some animation that. And this is just, of course, test animation. This is not anything close to a standard I'm putting towards the film. It's just a test of the character and it's showing that he is animatable and that he's got a lot of range of motion, essentially. So this first part is him spreading the wings, and almost imagine like you have him flapping his wings. And just how broad that spread is, and I'll show it from the back after it plays. And I'm gonna have to zoom in to different parts of this while it's kind of playing back. It's not very friendly with me scrubbing, but I've noticed so far with this character. So I'll let this play back to where his toes are gonna curl here. And towards the animation. So that's the next part I want to show. So we'll just let the timeline do its thing. Blah, you get the point. Basically, the thing is, I find that my timeline, when you're scrubbing, sometimes it just crashes a lot with like more heavier characters. So I'm just gonna wait till that plays, and then okay, and there we go. Big thing is here I wanted with these toes was to keep the volume, and you can see that when he's doing that, it keeps the volume. Another thing is I've fully rigged the character's wings closing and opening so it mirrors from left and right. And wish I could scrub back, but it's a little bit just unresponsive. So I'm just gonna let it do its thing, and we'll kind of break down as it goes. But you know what I say, slow and steady starts the race. So you can imagine that posing these out, all these feathers would be really hard, and it would take a lot of time. I'll break down how the rig is doing that in a very simple way. And there's another thing. Imagine this character sitting down and animating that and doing it every time getting it look the same. The same with these wings folding, right? And making that nice smooth transition. He's also got something so that you can stretch the head out when he's flying and keep the volume in the neck. And then there's just a little test here of some facial expressions. I'll scrub back so you don't have to wait for this part. Even though I don't recommend scrubbing with this guy. Just a little test of just a smile, a happy face and an angry face, and the range we're getting in that. And then this jaw, I've rigged it so it's like an actual bird. The top mandible kind of does the cranial kinesis that birds have as well. But you can just see how broad. Again, I made an effort to really practice some weight painting on this guy, that he gets a nice stretch in his whole throat and squash against the jaw. And he really gets his mouth nice wide and open. I've always kind of struggled with this area of the jaw, and I wanted to push it a lot further. You get this nice smooth transition. And now I'll go into showcasing the rig. So the rig, I can just turn this on here. Okay, first we'll kind of break down what's happening with those flapping controls. So if it actually plays back properly, sometimes it doesn't. What's happening here is I have a little almost like what I basically explain it as a gradient that's basically pulling around all the groups that are like basically like your null objects on here so that they kind of naturally fall off to create this curve so that you get this kind of, you can sometimes break it, but you get this nice fall off of like each one of these feathers having a separate kind of distance from the character and it looking very organic. You can do that with the middle. So I'm basically using these controls to cheat a lot of the animation. You can go in there and, like, if you're the animator in that situation, you can touch up each individual one. But obviously, like, doing that is like your own choice and at despair, and you want to use these guys to kind of get your main general motion, and then you can just tie up your pose towards the end. And this works the same for his shoulder. Get the same kind of motion. I've had to kind of cheat the middle, but I'll show you what I mean by cheat it. So the middle kind of brings up the entire shoulder, and it does this like little kind of general control. And each side is actually the same, so I actually mirrored all these utility nodes on each side. So they work exactly the same, basically, which was not easy, and it took a lot of time. Let's put it that way. And the tail works the same way. So if you wanted to fan out the tail like it's flapping or doing some stuff, you can get this nice kind of, flapping motion, and it transitions pretty well. And it's not like a huge effort to pose with the character at this point. Because you like, I'm not saying you don't want to make an effort. As like, what I'm just saying is you want to be efficient. You want to be able to actually animate this guy. Good luck with doing that with everything on there. Now I wanted to break down what's happening with this and when he's sitting down. When he's sitting down, it's an integer transition, and then I have, like, you can see that he was sitting down and the legs weren't really breaking. What's causing that is I have kind of like a soft eye casing that I built into this character specifically for a lot of problems that would happen with CIK when he was walking. It's mostly about the size and how they would crush up against the bird and how you'd want the motion to actually look. You can see he's moving just from like the knees and pivoting from the ankle rather than the thigh kind of crushing up against the bird. So you can see in this example here, like it can still do that, but only to a certain degree because it'll crush up against the bird too much otherwise. I've kind of cheated it, so you can go in there and animate that if you want to test this transition for like him walking. And this is like specifically for that, is like you can see he's hinging on just that joint right here, the knee and that. So if you wanted to like actually go in there and then animate that, you could. And you can probably like, basically as the animator, you can say, well, what if I want like only like 2.5 of that value to play around with how it's going to react. You can see that the leg is now actually using half an IK on that one side. Now the knee is sort of crushing against the body, but only to a certain degree because it's like a soft IK sort of thing. So you use the animator, can play around with that value and find best where you want. It's a position. And then you could go and grab your like leg guy, and you can start saying, well, I want to do this with his leg. There's limitations to the character for sure, and you'd have to kind of best pick your battles, like where you'd want like maybe like 1.5, like so it's like a very soft IK kind of thing. And it will depend on situations basically, but you could get this character to walk is what you could imagine. You could still have kind of a lot of controls for that. It would be the idea. So you could lift up the leg and then do that. And then you could basically fix this after. Just to kind of like generalize for like what I'm explaining about the hips. Basically, that's what's happening is you're cheating this transition. And I might even make it so that in FK we have kind of this like this is what I'm probably gonna change is on the FK. I would like this Because normally this FK, you do have all these controls kind of come with it. I'd almost recommend myself to probably change it to this, so you could just cheat him walking. So you could like bend this down, and then and this is an example of it working. You can see that this leg's lowering down, and this leg's going up, but it's just hinging from this axis. So you could play around with like what you want for IK and FK, and then you could say, well, I want to take an FK leg on this side and then start doing my motion and my transition of him like scooching his leg forward. But only like do it for this side. And birds, for the way they walk, they kind of put one foot forward and then move their hips and then move the next leg. So this is going to technically work very well for this kind of character when making him do a walk cycle. There's enough stuff here that I've given the M here, which is me, to actually figure this guy out. Basically, is what I'm trying to get across. Oh, just gonna give it a second. I thought it was actually gonna crash there during the middle of my presentation, like it always does. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I'm gonna just zero that out. But you get what I'm saying now, basically. Like they're like transition-based controls for a lot of complications with this character's anatomy, because he just simply has a lot of complications with his anatomy. With him being a bird, like you can't make the legs work the same way with a character, because they're not going to be like a human character. Their legs are sitting straight. They're not kind of like in a half bend position like this for a character. So you're going to have a lot of problems. And then to break down what's happening here, basically, oh, wrong direction. When you pull him forward in the Z space, what's happening here is there's a ribbon on this portion of the character. If I can probably, I can hit probably, I don't know what else will work, but display, show, all. Yeah, I kind of got my idea. So, and I can go on here and show the actual character's neck ribbon, I believe. So I'm one of these. Right, we're gonna have to put a thing on there, but basically, like he's got a ribbon, just like this, in his neck, that all the joints are rigged to. I put it on one of these. A second, let me find his actual neck root. I'm just remembering where I put this. Neck ribbon. Sorry about that. I was remembering where the fuck I put that. So this is his neck ribbon. And it's what's driving that motion. Okay. And just actually just press it rather than going to thing. So this ribbon is what's driving that motion. It's a number of blend. It's like two blend shapes, and these controls manipulating the ribbon and his neck in the space so that that transition control is very smooth. Now I did have to put a little bit of rotation on his head because it will just normally do that, but you can see you get this kind of broad reaction, and he actually keeps his neck in full volume, right? Like as he kind of darts out, it keeps its transition. And that's so important for this kind of character. If you want his neck to be out flying, and then you don't have to just go in and like you can still go in after. Like this is some groups with such different keys that are like making this transition possible. And then you can just go in after and then just tie this up if you want with the graph editor, or doing what you do, or change the pose a little bit. You can also, since I made the neck ribbon visible, like on my control here, I can say, well, I want to take, let's say if you're going to the shape editor and making a blend shape, I will take this isoparm, right? And then I want my neck to maybe be a little bit more like this. But the joints are actually on here. The joints are in each one parts of these isoparms. If I show my joints, I'm pretty sure when I show my joints, if it's working properly at least. you can see that the joints are living on these isoforms, just like most ribbons. So basically, the modifications I make to that ribbon and the blend shape will move these joints dynamically, like you'd want with any ribbon. This is obviously just a much more complicated situation because you're using it on a whole character's neck, which is a very long neck, may I add. So we'll just zero that out. Next thing I'll break down is the wings. How the fuck am I folding these? Okay, it's a very big cheat. Basically, there's like a number of poses, and the number I gave it was 10. It would be nicer if it was a longer transition. I only limited it to 10 frames, but it's just good for the film and it will work. Plus, they close their wings pretty fast, to be completely honest. So the way this works is it cheats. I made a pose stored into this integer for each one of these controls, so that it nicely, like even for like angles like like 7 or 8, where it's really getting into the nitty gritty of these wings having a lot of angle cheats that has to happen to get arcs and to get dragon follows through to happen. It's just a mess, right? And then you want it to go to this pose and it always look the same. And the same for both sides, right? And that's what you'd always want. You want it to look exactly the same, so you can just go in these integers. You can go into graph editor, smooth out the integer itself, and then it'll create this nice transition, nice closing his wings. And on this, I've actually got a few different attributes that I'm going to show that you can see are at 10 right now, because this is kind of like his relaxed position. So on there, I've got the relaxed scalpia, which basically cheats this, because I just wanted to have two poses where like this is his default T pose on this side as well, where it was like not against the bird, but I wanted his relaxed position of the character when you bring him in to have that in there. But the only problem was, as a starting position, this was very annoying. This is always very annoying to rig. So I actually rigged it when it was straight. So that, and I used some groups and set driven keys to put it into this position, so that it's very like it's relaxed and it's compact, and you don't have to do it in the shot. But you can change it if you want. You can be like, okay, well, I want them to start in the shot like this. That's another thing I'm going to show. I want it to start in a shot like this, right? Basically is your idea. And then the next thing is the Alua. Same sort of thing, just a much simpler rig. Just it kind of flapping against the bird and relaxing. And you can play with that transition for both wings. So they're basically just the same handle, just left and right. And these are, of course, like his little IK guys, his little vectors. So you can move the knee, and you can see I've parented this little knee pad to the hierarchy, so get this kind of dynamic rolling motion. But you don't have to really work this into it because it's just parented to the knee properly. So it reacts very accordingly, like it should. And it's very important the way I did that. I'll show you one of his other controls. And then I'm going to go into how the bag works. So I haven't really broken down this bag that he's got with him. So the problem that happens with this a lot, this knee pad, is it would be an FK. Where you can see you have to cheat so much of it moving around, and you'd have to like make extra controls. But I'm like, I'm not going to make extra controls on there. It's already parented to him. Just parent it to the right spot, and it will always follow, basically for rotations and transitions. And it's the same thing with this lower leg piece. You want it to just naturally kind of move with him. So that's how that works. And then now I'm going to break down what's happening with this bag. I haven't explained this at all yet. So this bag, it may seem like it's kind of a simple rig, but it's pretty complex. basically it's like a rope, kind of wire, same that you can use to pose this bag, because it's his bag that he usually holds around his body, carry the spear. You can see that it's like guiding this rope, and it's keeping the buckles perfectly in place. He's doing that. And if I want, I can go in here and like say that I'm putting this bag around a character. I want to get a nice shape, kind of broadly pose that out. Basically, there's a ribbon, or sorry, not ribbon. There's like a wire deformer for this, so it's stretching out and moving that around. And then this is holding on to the bottom clusters of that wire, so you're getting this kind of cheating motion of it always staying intact with the character. And then I've got a lattice with a number of clusters on this bag. Now the spear itself isn't the form because it's a hard object. If you wanted to, you could basically like get this kind of, let's say like the bag is dragging and he's in the air and you want it to have a little bit of weight. You can kind of just like get this like nice kind of shape here because it's posing out the lattice for you, right? And you can kind of say, well, there's a little bit of weight of the spear on the bag. And it's for the air and gravity, and it's pushing the material. And you can get that pretty quick. And then there's a few cog handles here. So that's the spear. So say I wanted to just take the spear out. It's there. And it's got its own little rig too. And you can like use like these little claws that are kind of, and I have to work on the weight painting, I guess. I know that these weren't fully not weighted to one joint. But you can see that basically the spear will have a number of manipulators because it's supposed to be like a folding spear, like a spear that folds up. And it's got some limitations, obviously. But you can imagine what you could do with this to kind of have some cheats for the character holding this spear. Now let's move that cog handle back. And the nice thing is I've parented the hierarchy of that spear, so it always kind of moves the whole rig around. And it keeps the spear in the bag, which is simple. It's just your hierarchy's got to be very proper. Now I'll go and zero out these guys. And we'll just finish up with the rig showcase with one more thing. And this is kind of a cool control as well. This is what I've called the flight handle. And you can see it when a character is in FK, it's basically cheating, moving him around in kind of like space. It has certain limitations, but what it's for really is. Yeah? Yeah, I'll be down in a second. Sorry, parents were asking me a question, but what this is for more is just like basically this handle kind of drags the whole pelvis around, and you're just kind of like treating it like he's like almost like he's soaring. And this is doing it on a group, not the actual pelvis control. So like if you wanted to go to the actual pelvis control and then do this, you could. It feels kind of more like a way of like, expressing motion and, kind of dragging this around to play around with some different angle cheats. And then you can go and adjust this as well. That's basically what that control's for. So I'll just go and zero that out. And the last thing I want to break down is what's going on with some of his face. So he's got these, as usual, and this is what I always build in most characters, is his usual eye movement. that, and how it's cheated into the head. And normally this guy would actually just drag along. I think when I break the channels here, I'll do that. So break. Yeah, so we're gonna have to. The reason why this isn't working is normally this drags around the eye in the shot with him. But also here's some green values because I put some keys on it, so I've got to hide some stuff, of course. Or just fix that on the rig. That you don't want to key these, or these values themselves aren't visible. But what it would be doing is, when you move this eye around, it would be moving this around. But it would also just be rotating this, so you get, and this is the way I usually rig eyelid movement, is I connect these in the connection editor, or the node editor, I guess. I'm not sure where you can show this. Yeah, you kind of can. So this is his face, and then these are the two unit conversions that relate to the eye aim that normally would be driving this. And it would basically rotate his eye lid to kind of follow his eyes. So you don't have to do that as the animator, because that's an annoying thing. Annoying reaction to have to do for every angle. And the last thing I'll showcase is his jaw and the way it works. So you can see that it's basically a blend shape that's just a very soft value as it opens more. So you get this kind of upper and lower mandible movement, and obviously the lower is a lot more broad. And he's got, I'm just going to show this. Yeah, he's got a little tongue that's got its own ribbon. So you can kind of broadly pose it, that tongue for a shot, because he actually talk in the film, so he's got a little tongue rig to go and do that for him. And I guess I probably should showcase this because it's you're probably wondering, can he close the helmet, or is it just kind of like a static thing? And I measured this so that when it closes, it goes kind of like right over his face and his beak, and it actually protects his face. And it looks kind of like, like it should. And you can kind of tweak where these little mechanical bearings are. And this is the complex part, was this curve here has to kind of nicely fold it around it, so he's got this little armor that he can look through and keep his face kind of clean and working good while he's doing that for certain angles. You can still see his eyes through that, and he can still see through that, and all that bullshit. And it works just like that. But this is its like starting position, is just it doing that. But you can just adjust it from like each angle, and all these like where it's supposed to be like little nails that kind of pivot it. And obviously this has got controls. It's just kind of a IK spline kind of thing, so that you get this kind of like a broad reaction from that. And it's like if all things, this is like the last thing you're gonna animate on the character in shots, is like this just kind of like doing its thing to get a little bit more overlapping action. And of course he's got some blinks too, and basically you can grab each one of these and then close his eyes. I didn't put too many things on the face panel, just the things I'm gonna need for him, because the only like really speech phonemes a bird has is the oo and ah, or the like the opening and closing. So I put a little oo and big oo. You can kind of transition in between how big his oo is to get that little shape. So that's the character, and I guess I should just show you, if you wanted to move these like little plumage things, yes, you can do that too. That's just a little extra thing if you want to do that. So hopefully you enjoyed that character presentation. I've worked a lot on this guy. Maybe one last thing I should show is if you move the entire root of the character, everything comes with. Right? Not all these controls, because certain things had to sit at the surface when the character is moving around. But you can see, and it's even more noticeable. If I can show this, right? All his joints, every single joint, including the IK and FK, for every single thing, is coming with. It's like maybe the knee vector's gotta be adjusted because there's something. Oh, no, they're there. Maybe one of them is missing. Who knows? But anyways, you see, yeah, basically his whole skeleton's coming with him when you move around the root. And all the pieces of the model, there's not a single thing missing here. I just left these curves in their place because obviously when you move the wires or anything with the ribbon, it's going to break the ribbon, is the idea. So that's just a little thing to kind of add on to what's happening here. I'm just going to zero him out, and then we'll conclude this presentation. So hopefully you enjoyed this guy. I spent a lot of time on him. I've gotten actually 2 other characters done that I'm going to showcase at some point in the week, which is Abigail and Junior, which is like Monty's wife and his son in the film. And I'll showcase those characters later in the week. So hopefully you enjoyed this. This guy has been my pride and joy, and probably the most complicated character I've ever rigged yet. There's more to come that will be probably more complicated than this guy. Hopefully you enjoyed.